This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is July 4th, 2024. Happy birthday, America. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, we are deep into free agency, and there is one roster spot remaining. How are we doing?
Well, as you guys are listening to this, there's a great possibility that I am kicking back at a Disney resort right now. So I will not be trying to think about anything and stressing about this Magic final roster spot because I don't want to. We're going to talk about it, obviously, but after that, I don't even want to try to think about it, if possible, till after I get back, because it is ridiculous in the social media space right now. There are so many Magic fans who are there. There's some potential Magic Twitter civil war ability that could happen based on what happens with this final roster spot.
It's gotten a little bit toxic, for sure. We'll talk about the moves, but like especially as it started with the Gary re-signing, and it's like we're really basically just running this back. It might be like version 2.1 of the team that we saw last year with some minor changes. Obviously, the massive addition of KCP, but everything is the same, and we'll talk about all of that. But yeah, sometimes it feels like people just want moves for the sake of moves, regardless of whether it is the right move or a good move. Sometimes they just want a move. But we'll break all of that down. But yes, we'll talk about who is going to end up in that final roster spot. And there is one point guard in particular that if the spot goes to them, there is going to be a bit of a... I don't know. I don't want to say like a revolt. It might not be that serious, but there's going to be a tangent of Magic fans who are not happy. But we'll talk all about that a little bit later into the episode. I want to basically just pick up where we left off with the last episode. So with the last episode, the only thing that the Magic had done was sign Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to a 3-year, $66 million, $22 million average annual value deal, where he has a player option in that third year. That was where we left it. The Magic still had like $30 million in cap space, and we were trying to see where that was going to be allocated. A lot of people had their eye on Isaiah Hartenstein, and I think it was Monday or maybe I think it was Monday where we heard that Isaiah Hartenstein was signing the 3-year, $87 million deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder, $29 million average annual value. I was upset to see that. We, it didn't really seem like we maybe even got a meeting or a conversation with Hartenstein and his representatives. But him coming in at $29 million a year, Luke, was much higher than what I thought like the Magic would, even if it was like a slight overpay to get a guy like that. $29 million a year, too rich for my blood. What was your reaction to that deal, and how do you feel about missing out on Isaiah Hartenstein?
There wasn't anything about, when it came down to it, we knew that he met with Oklahoma City and Oregon. But aside from that, we hadn't heard anything. It was like, okay, well, either the Magic are just being sneaky or what's going on. And it is hard for, in this instance, with free agents, as we learned with Paul George, it is hard for a meeting to stay quiet because there's not just the Magic, there's other parties involved. So I think we just didn't really have anything with Hartenstein at all. I don't think that he really was part of our plans, despite being linked early on before free agency even started. I was thinking that he would be like, if he were to come to the Magic and what I would want him to be on the payroll for, I was thinking at most 24. And so after that, to see him get 29, it's like, I don't think the Magic were really ever in this. And I don't think they cared. So clearly we've seen now, hindsight is 2020. Since then, because when that happened, I was like, well, what are we doing? And then the dominoes start to fall and you realize, oh, we're running it back. That's what's happening. And then you have the JI stuff, the restructuring we'll talk about that I'm sure all of you listening to this know about already. But yeah, that was kind of the last thing, because it was like, I would love for us to sign him and then do something. I just feel like that frees up a lot of flexibility with what the front office could have done. You get Hartenstein, and then you can either, let Goga walk and put Dell on the bench, trade Dell, keep Goga, and then just trade for whatever position you want, as far as like if you want a 1 or if you want a 3 or a 4, whatever it is. So I thought there was a lot of flexibility there, but clearly our front office just like doesn't really care. They're in a little bit of, they're not in a rush. Magic fans are in a rush. The front office of ours very clearly is not. So they're banking on internal development, and they added a shooter. So, and I don't really think that there's a huge issue with that. Underwhelming, yes, but that anyway, that's stemming all from like the Hartenstein thing and where I've been since then.
It's pretty apparent that even though there's these new tampering rules in place, there's still communication between organizations and these agencies and these players through back channels. There always has been, there always will be. Minutes into free agency, we heard that Oklahoma City was heading to Eugene, Oregon to have a meeting with Isaiah Hartenstein. That does not formulate in the matter of a few minutes to get your entire front office staff on a private jet out of Oklahoma City on its way to Oregon. So I think that the Magic probably heard pretty early on that, hey, like this is what it's going to take to get Hartenstein out of New York. And they're probably like, hey, we're probably good on that. I thought that if they were to make a deal for Hartenstein, that it would probably be about $25 million at the absolute most. I was guessing somewhere between 20 and 25 million annually. So when I saw it come out at 29, I'm like, I'm not mad at our front office at all for not being more aggressive and trying to make a deal for Hartenstein, because personally for me, that would have been a little bit too rich for my blood. So we missed out on Hartenstein, and then all of a sudden, sort of the attention must have pivoted back to Goga, right? Because if you bring in Hartenstein, you're moving on from Dell or Moe or Goga. You're not going to have 4 rotation caliber centers on this roster. And once they lost Hartenstein, there was rumors that the Knicks were interested in Goga Bitadze. So that moves on to the next point for us. The Magic have re-signed Goga Bitadze to a 3-year, $25 million deal, which comes out to $8.3 million average annual value. Some people thought this is a little bit of an overpay. For me, Goga was getting interest from teams around the league, teams that needed, a starting big or a backup big. And you had to overpay maybe a little bit for what he will be on this team, most likely, which is ultimately Wendell Insurance. And he's most likely going to be your third big. But if you're looking around the league at these deals that are being signed for, 150, 200, $300 million, Goga Bitadze making $8 million over the course of the next 3 years is a value contract. It's something that is easily tradable if you need to get out of that. And again, our front office understands, just like a lot of us, that you have to have that Wendell Carter Jr. insurance in the instance that he misses 15 to 20 games this upcoming season. And we already have proof of concept with Goga Bitadze stepping into the starting role, the team still being able to perform well, and Moe Wagner, just sort of keeping that second unit steady as that backup big. So I was fine with this deal. A lot of people, Magic fans in particular, were freaking out that we paid this guy this much. Knicks fans couldn't believe that they didn't give Goga at least that to try to get him away from the Magic. How do you feel about the Goga deal?
Man, the Goga deal for me was, I mean, we started to kind of see writing on the wall. If it wasn't the Knicks, who the growing sentiment kind of slowly became right before leading up to the Goga signing for the Magic, that the Knicks probably weren't going to be able to offer as much as the Magic, or definitely wouldn't be able to. If the Magic wanted them, they had to maybe slightly overpay in order to make it happen. So for me, I don't know. I think that he's definitely just, you're looking at, he's a little bit more than Wendell Insurance. at that point at that number. So I think you're definitely looking at him getting some more run is what the contract tells me this upcoming season. At least that's where I'm at. But we'll see how they utilize him. I just have no idea because they're running it back. The front office is running back, but they add KCP. They're restructuring deals. They're, doing things like Goga on that contract, and you've got Gary taking less money, all that sort of thing. So there's some moving pieces, and I'm very interested to see what this looks like because I just don't know that we'll have answers till training camp when we can start trying to see who's wearing what color penny jersey.
I think Goga is still going to be a Green Goblin. So I sort of disagree in that regard. Like, I think the center market was drying up so quickly that it was like, if we don't re-sign Goga, we're going to go out and get this guy maybe that we don't love a ton. This guy's already in our building. Wendell is probably going to miss some games. We've seen that. I don't see just how the minutes would work out with if you're going to play Moe and Goga lineups, or, there's only so many minutes at the center position to go around. And like $8 million, if a team is looking for a solid backup big, being able to get a guy for $8 million, that's almost nothing. So yeah, it's probably a bit of an overpay for what his role is going to be on this team. But if and when they decide to move that, they're not going to have any issues moving off of that deal. I don't have any issues with the $8 million, and I really don't think we're going to see that much of an increase in role for him. Because Wendell, sure, he's a great contract, right? He's making $11 million, I think, this year. So is Moe Wagner now, right? So Goga's still the lowest paid center on the roster. I don't think we're going to see that much change there, but for $8 million and having that insurance, I think it was pretty crucial for them to make that deal for Goga.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do, right? I don't know if at some point you're going to be playing. You could see instances where Moe is maybe at the 4, Goga at the 5, likely not at the same time. But I just think that Goga's going to find his way into the rotation a little bit more than what we saw this past season. As a result, we'll see. We can talk about what that depth chart looks like as of now, and it's something we were talking about before we started recording. But that power forward position, you got Paolo and Ji, and obviously you can go maybe a little bit smaller if you want. But it seems like Moe could be something that slides into the 4 at points, and Goga can get some spot 5 minutes, maybe a little, like I said, a little bit more than maybe what he did last year consistently.
All right, let's head to the next deal. And this is the one that sort of broke Magic Twitter, somewhat understandably. Re-signing Gary Harris, 2-year, $14 million, $7 million average annual value. I think most people expected once the KCP deal was made that Gary Harris probably would not be back. So when we all got the news and the report from Woj that Gary was coming back, there was a lot of confusion. I think even for myself, I don't know, Luke, for you, but I know for other Magic fans. But shortly thereafter, I started to put it all together. Like, look, Chuma is not coming back. Joe Ingles may or may not come back. Gary is just another guard wing that you have coming off the bench who is still a solid defender. Shot 38% from behind the arc last year as a veteran presence, knows this roster, knows this organization. You're adding great veteran depth, good defense, good three-point shooter for $7 million a year. If his name was not Gary Harris, people would be ecstatic about this move.
There was just a false narrative that Gary Harris isn't a good shooter. I don't know.
He had a bad playoff series. Guess what? So did almost everybody not named Paolo Banchero. Get over it.
And you also have to take into account the number that you got him at. At that number, because everyone wants to say, "Oh, at that, like I just can't believe we brought him back," and blah blah blah. Like that's their point. Is that they? But it's like, okay, knowing what you know now, where the Magic at this point have essentially exhausted all the cap space. What other shooting guard of that caliber are you getting at $8 million? And I truthfully haven't looked. So maybe I'm wrong, and I'll end up looking dumb for even saying it. But I'm willing to bet that I'd take Gary Harris over most of those guys, especially to fit team need.
The only other guys that people were talking about as hopefully targeting before the Gary deal was announced was like Gary Trent Jr. and Buddy Hield. And I don't believe that either of those guys is a big enough upgrade over Gary. For one, he's still the better defender out of all three of those guys. Maybe not as good of a shooter, but he's still plenty good enough. 38% from three, 43% last year. Like, this guy shot on average like 39% from three the last 3 seasons here. And again, good veteran, knows this team, knows the organization, fits into the culture, all of those things. I just don't really see how we could have a major problem with this move other than the fact that it points to this team running it back, which this team was 1/2 away from advancing to the second round last year. You're adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Paolo Banchero is going to be better. Franz Wagner is going to be better. Jalen Suggs is going to be better. Anthony Black is going to be better. Like, I don't understand the outrage other than if you're just upset that we didn't make a move to make a move. I was on record saying once, we missed out on a couple of the big names. We got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, like saying, hey, we need to make another move to sort of keep pace with the East. We may not be able to keep pace with the East now. It seems like the top 4 in the East is pretty locked in to, in some order, Boston, New York, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, right? I think it's not a bad thing to say that. Just look at those teams, look at where they're at, look at like their cap sheet, right? If the Magic are 5th in the Eastern Conference next year, one, I still give them a good chance to win a matchup against at least 2 of those teams, like whether it's Milwaukee or the Knicks or Philadelphia, maybe not Boston, but you still have to like their chances in a matchup like that. And success is not always linear. Just because we made it to 7 games this year in the first round doesn't mean we're going to make it to the second round next year. There's a good chance that you go 7 games and you lose in 7 games in the first round again. Look how injured the East was this year. We did get a little bit of injury luck. It is what it is, right? But making a move just for the sake of making a move, that is not the move. Patience. This front office has been preaching patience since the day that they got here. They came in, got a mandate, go win now. They went out and won now. Once they got to the point, could show ownership, hey, this team isn't going any further. They've done everything right since then. I don't understand how they haven't built up enough good faith in this fan base to this point for us to just say, like, hey, this maybe wasn't the slam dunk, home run, grand slam offseason that we wanted, but it was still pretty freaking good. And all the deals that you've made are so tradable that if and when, it might not be a star, it might just be a really good high-level role player that becomes available. You're going to be able to aggregate these deals to make a move for the next guy that you want to bring in. They maintain long-term flexibility and they improve the roster. They not only retained shooting, but they added shooting in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I just don't understand how anyone could say that this is a bad offseason.
We're ahead of schedule, and that's what it boils down to. People are acting like this is the 34-win Magic team from now 2 seasons ago that we're running it back with. And it's crazy to me. I understand it's underwhelming because at one point you thought you had a shot at Paul George and Klay Thompson. Totally understand.
Which we never did.
Right. And that's just what we were
in
told.
reality.
And in reality, you didn't. And let's be honest, Gary Trent Jr., Buddy Hield, either the Magic just didn't want to allocate the money there and they knew they could get Gary on a steal of a deal, if we're being honest, or those guys just didn't want to come here. It's not like they did the Gary Harris deal right off the bat, right? They evaluated. I'm sure that they had meetings with other players. They just simply didn't want to come because they want to ring chase and maybe take a lower pay cut elsewhere. And we'll see how it pans out. But all that to say, man, again, we're ahead of schedule. And I know, listen, people are listening to this and how are you not mad? It's because we are where you will be by the start of the season. Mentally. We've accepted it. We're not getting the big names. And we moved on. We are just simply further ahead in the grieving process of the fact that we didn't land the guys that we were told we had a shot at, because in all actuality, we knew the likelihood was we probably weren't going to land those guys. And it looks like we never were. So now you just got to move forward, see what we've got on the table. This is a 47-win team. And used to your point, like game 7 of the first round. Yes,
you were up by 20 in the first half.
Yeah. And you had injury luck, and that's why we were able to get that 5th seed in the East. But as injuries are part of the game, so don't take this as me celebrating injuries. But the Sixers have Joel Embiid and Paul George, who notably tend to go down in general. They don't have the greatest luck. And if either of those guys go down, Philly does exactly what happens last year when they lose Joel. The Knicks dealt with their own injury bugs as well. And like the last last fourth of the season. So anything can happen. We just got to hope we stay healthy. Just like every other team has to hope they stay healthy. And we'll be all right. And ultimately for me, I'm not necessarily shooting for 47 wins. But do I believe this team could still win 50 next year with the East being as good as they are? Absolutely. It's a few more wins than last year. And I think that they are talented enough. And if they are whatever, we'll see what they do with this last roster spot. But you've got a deep team. You need to fill in some holes, obviously. But you've got a deep team. Kind of the same song and dance as last year, but now you have KCP, who we likened, or at least I likened, to Gary Harris in terms of like being a 2.0, an upgrade from Gary Harris. And now you've got both of them. You could do way worse in the shooting guard slot, that's for sure. And if you just step back and you're like, okay, mentally get yourself to the point where you're like, this is what the roster we're running with. It is what it is. I accept it. You won 47 games last year. You have a chance to win 50, but ultimately, I would love to see, and as everybody would, my main goal for next year is to make it past the first round. It may not happen, but that's the whole season. I'll be able to be thinking, okay, I've seen this group, this exact same group, aside from the upgrade we made. I've seen them win 47 games, put themselves firmly in the playoff race. I know they're capable of that, so I'm really not going to maybe live and die with every loss like I might have last year, because I know that they can do damage in the first round, whether they are the 6th seed or the 5th seed or happen to fall into the 4th seed or get in through the play-in. Because let's be honest, this Magic team showed, Paolo Banchero showed, that he's going to be able to get things done. And so it'll be fun to see how this plays out. And it'll be fun to look back and be like, we told you guys, you're overreacting. This is ridiculous that you're like throwing fits on Twitter about this. Number one, it's not that serious. And number two, this isn't a bad team to run it back with at all.
I would disagree. It is that serious because I am very emotional when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I just think the overreactions were completely ridiculous. I want to do a quick exercise here. So we were able to be the 5th seed last year in large part due to luck with health, specifically with the Magic, but other teams. So obviously, you end up tied with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Pacers, but because of tiebreakers, we ended up 5th, right? Boston still very much in a way better than us. New York, I feel like with the moves that they've made, retaining OG, trading for Mikal Bridges, they're very much better than us. Philadelphia, probably still, right? Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George. Although, yeah, they're going to have fun filling out the rest of that roster. When we talk about Milwaukee won 2 more games than we did last year. Yes, a lot of that had to do with health. At this point, I don't know how much I believe in that roster. Milwaukee didn't get a ton better, right? Dame was not that great last year for Milwaukee. Giannis is Giannis, but who knows if they're really going to be able to make all of that kind of stuff worse. Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, those guys are another year older. Cleveland didn't do anything to improve this offseason. We added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You add Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to that Orlando Magic team, the Magic probably win that series in 5 games. Okay? Then we've got Indiana, who I think we like the way that we match up with Indiana. I think the addition of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I would probably put us right above the Indiana Pacers. So the Magic should be projected to be the 5th seed next year, and then one of those 4 teams ahead of you has some bad injury luck, all of a sudden you should be a top 4 seed next year. And if it's Milwaukee or if it's Philadelphia, like, I think that there is a chance that we could be right there in the mix with those teams for those seeds anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't the sky is not falling.
Just breathe, y'all. Just breathe. I get that it's not the home run that we wanted, right? I totally understand that. But when it comes to the home runs, we were talking about like 4 or 5 guys that we were really zeroing in on, whether it was Paul George, which would have been like the ultimate swing, Klay Thompson. Neither of those guys were interested whatsoever, it seems like. Ramona Shelburne wrote an entire article about Paul George's free agency. There was not one mention of the Orlando Magic. They talked about the Clippers. They talked about the 76ers. There was not one mention of a meeting with the Orlando Magic in that. So that tells you that Paul George was never seriously considering the Orlando Magic. Klay Thompson wasn't either. You missed out on Isaiah Hartenstein. You did get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. A lot of people said, hey, if we get KCP and Hartenstein, this is a fantastic summer. You didn't get Hartenstein. You still got KCP, and you retained a lot of depth. You have tradable pieces moving forward, so you have flexibility to make moves that you need to make. We still have all of our own draft picks. We have the Denver first-round pick for next year. There are still moves that this organization can make as soon as like the beginning of the year. Like once they get past December, you can't make any trades for guys that are signed to new deals until December once the season starts. But once we get into the beginning of the year and we start to get closer to the trade deadline, if the good move presents itself, we have everything that we need to be able to do that. A lot of people's issue with not making a move at the trade deadline with Gary or Markelle was, hey, these guys are going to be unrestricted free agents. You're going to lose the asset for nothing. Guess what? Can't really say much for Markelle, at least not as right now. But for Gary, we didn't lose the asset for nothing. You got him to re-sign at a really, really valuable deal for us. So the sky's not falling, everybody. Just take a breather. This is still a successful offseason. Going to take a quick break just to give our patrons a very special shout out. They're the folks that help make each and every episode possible. We always shout out our Elite and Hall of Fame tier patrons. So let's go ahead and start by shouting out the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson, Tulo, Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Normal Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Donkey Punch Dave, Powell and Francis Warmth, Pierre A. Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Danimal, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Dalek Lopez, Fuchsia, Bill Fulton, Emin, Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce African, Shahin 177, Bobby the Don, Himlo Ben Himro, R Improv 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Mysterious Mosley, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Only Franz, Maria, Keith Loss, Fritz, Brub, Sal, Kason Green, Santi Leon, Kane Eckler, The Distract, Ahmad Timsa, Chantu, Tom Gadsden, Dead Air, Richard Tuttle, Jeremiah Quintero, Debo 1980, Magic Matt, Michael Thompson, Mama Richmond, Next Snappa, What's Up Playoffs 2024, Dylan Fay, David Duffy, Smith Sheeks, Ship Sinks, Bueno Time, Suggs Muggs, Daniel Anderson, Barry, and Mackle Caney. A big shout out to all of our patrons. You can find us at patreon.com/the6man-show. Now, Luke, the next deal that was made was the Magic re-signing Moe Wagner to a 2-year, $22 million deal, $11 million average annual value. The team declined Moe Wagner's second-year team option for $8 million at the start of free agency, with the understanding that they were going to try to renegotiate a longer-term deal for Moe Wagner, and it opened up cap space for them to utilize throughout free agency. And he comes in at 2 years, $22 million, a little bit of a pay raise for Moe Wagner. You figured that the number had to come in a little bit higher than Goga's number. When Goga, the 8.3 came out, I said, okay, we're probably going to see Moe land somewhere between $9 and $12 million, and it was $11 million. So good deal for him. Happy that he gets a pay raise. I think at this point, one of the better backup bigs in the league, is really a super important part of what the Magic do and a part of the Magic culture. We joke about the Franz tax, but to me, you can't ignore that element, right? Not saying that like, oh, they're bringing this guy back to keep Franz happy. But yeah, it is an added benefit that it happens to be our second best player's brother.
Yeah. Everybody talks, especially siblings. So if a franchise does your older sibling dirty, you're going to feel a certain way about it. And it absolutely will, maybe not in the moment and right away sour a relationship, but the next time there's an inkling of something done wrong or they feel like they were slighted in any way, that's a quick trip there to being officially done with that relationship. So yeah, good for Moe. We lose his better half, equal half. We lose Joe Ingles, obviously, but it does suck because he did a lot for Moe when it came to the offensive side and the pick and roll, especially. But yeah, I mean, Moe brings the energy. He sacrifices his body, puts it on the line to take charges, and he's become essentially a vet on this team. And I mean, if you can keep him, you can keep him. Like you said, one of the better backup options. Just brings way too much to the table to let walk, especially when his brother is our second best player.
And I think the point that I bring up, the fact that he's his brother, is because they, through the reporting, had made the expectation that we're declining this, but we're going to renegotiate for a longer deal. So the longer that went on, where like maybe in other situations some doubt could creep in as to whether or not that was going to be the case. In my mind, I was like, there was also the expectation set that we were going to do the same with Joe Ingles. That did not come to fruition. We'll talk about that too. But with Moe, I was like, there's no way that they tell Franz's brother that, hey, we're going to renegotiate this deal and then just not. Because not only are you souring that relationship with Moe, but that does affect Franz. Like, anybody that tells you otherwise is just not being honest. I'm not saying they brought Moe back because he's Franz's brother, but you do have to approach it with a certain level of respect going through those negotiations, because if you upset him, you're also upsetting, your second best player.
And I mean, let's not get it twisted. Nobody thinks this, but it's not Thanasis. Like, it's not the Bucks.
No,
bringing back.
It ain't Bronny
Thanasis.
James,
and it ain't Bronny. It's in the family, but it's definitely not like Moe Wagner would still be in the league, regardless of what we did with this contract today. He's just too electric. He gets under people's skin. He's exactly what you need, and he can actually put the ball in the hoop, and is incredible around the rim, much like his brother in that sense. But yeah, I mean, good for him. He'll be, going into the season where he'll be 29 when this contract is expiring. And we will see what the Magic end up doing with that. But I think that it's safe to say Moe Wagner could easily get another contract here in 2 years, depending on how everything's going. But it probably, by that time, he'll be like 28 or 29, coming out of his prime. You could get him for probably a lower number at that point. I think this was just a masterful job by the front office to keep their options open. A lot of short-term deals, like we talked about earlier, tradable. Very tradable if necessary. But I really could see Moe Wagner continue to be on this team for at least the next 4 years, doing another contract that's a little bit less the next time around.
Sidebar, this is going to seem like a really weird and random tangent, but for some reason it just popped into my mind. I was being accused on Twitter of essentially like carrying weight for the carrying water for the organization by my reaction to some of these deals. If you think that, you don't know me for one at all, but let me just like try to make this as clear as I can to our viewers and our listeners. If I think something that the team does is stupid, I'm going to say that I think it's stupid. I also have the ability to sit back and analyze what is going on and try to see if there is some benefit to what they are doing. And that's the point that I'm trying to make with a lot of these deals. Is it exactly what we wanted? Probably not, but is it a bad outcome? I don't think that is the case either. Moving on, Jake Fisher broke this news first of all Monday. He was the first person that I saw that really was going to be on top of it, reporting that Jonathan Isaac's final year of his contract was going to be renegotiated And then the Magic were going to extend Jonathan Isaac, and we did get that news on Tuesday. So Jonathan Isaac's contract has been renegotiated and then extended for 5 years, $84 million, average annual value of $16.8 million. A little bit of a pay cut. He was making 17.4 annually on the last deal, but this deal is much different than the previous deal, Luke, because essentially what the Magic have done is they've used some of their remaining cap space to add $10 million to Jonathan Isaac's contract. So when we talked about the last episode that, hey, KCP is going to be the Magic's highest paid player next year, nope, it's still Jonathan Isaac. For like the 5th year in a row, it's still, or I guess since we moved on from Vooch, Jonathan Isaac will still be the highest paid player on the Magic. He's going to make $27 million this year. And then basically they're able to start the extension, and in that first year, cut his salary by 40% and then 8% over the subsequent years. So the way that it is going to break down for JI, this year he's going to make $27 million. 2025, 2026, he's going to make roughly 16.2. These are all estimates, by the way. Sitting here and trying to do the math, nothing has been made official. Nothing is even on Spot Track. Like if you keep up to date with NBA contracts and cap stuff, Spot Track is like the place to go. And even Spot Track has not updated Jonathan Isaac's contract details. So 2025, 2026, 16.2, 2026, 2027, 14.9, 2027, 2028, 13.7, 2028, 2029, 12.62. With the way the cap is projected to increase over the course of the next couple of years, like Jonathan Isaac making $16.2 and $14.9 million, 2 and 3 seasons from now is going to be an absolute steal. If he is able to keep up the same level of production that he gave the Magic this year, and we're able to see him play more games, if he's able to get closer to like 60 games a year, that is incredible value for the defensive upside that Jonathan Isaac brings to a team.
All around, this deal is awesome, right? For Jonathan Isaac, it's awesome because I would venture to say that Jonathan Isaac maybe feels like he would understand if he couldn't get as much money, especially the amount that he's going to be making in that first year of the restructured contract, due to the fact of availability. He played 58 games last year, which is great, but we eventually would like him to be able to play 65 plus. But what the Magic were able to do is, I mean, incredible. I wonder if any of it is just the fact of Jonathan Isaac, in the sense of like, I love Orlando. Obviously, he loves Orlando. He's on a 5-year freaking deal. But I love Orlando. They've treated me well. And it's like, I'm going to give them a bit of a steal if this career goes as they think it can go, and the belief that they have in me. So moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out production-wise and health-wise for Jonathan Isaac. But if you look at it from the standpoint of moving forward, you probably expect him to play 22 minutes a game, 21, 22 minutes a game. You very well could see him just slot right into that 6-man role this upcoming season. And as well as he did last season when he was playing those 58 games, then obviously in the playoffs as well, where he shoots 37% from 3 on 4 attempts a game. There's a lot that Jonathan Isaac brings to the table. And if he's doing that offensively, along with what we know he does defensively, he's a game changer. It was definitely in the Magic's best interest to restructure the deal, give him a bit of a bump for that first year, and then lock him in for 5 years at the same time. I just hats off to Jeff and AP.
Speaking of him being a 6-man, I had no idea that Jonathan Isaac did receive votes for 6-man of the year this year. It's only, I think he received 9 points, but that's not insignificant for him playing 58 games and only playing 16 minutes per game. So if he's able to get to 21, 22 minutes per game and he's able to play 60 or 65 games as well as throughout the postseason, like this contract is going to be an absolute steal for the Orlando Magic, and happy to see that JI, at least it looks like he's going to be around for quite a while. Now, not a move that the Magic made. I guess it is a move that the Magic made because they declined his team option. But it looked like the Magic were going to try to renegotiate with Joe Ingles. That did not come into fruition. So Joe Ingles has signed a 1-year deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves, rejoining previous Jazz teammates Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert. I mean, it seemed like this final roster spot that is open, basically you're bringing everybody back. You declined Chuma. You declined Joe. Markelle Fultz is a free agent. You brought back KCP, and there's one more spot left on the roster at this point. And you drafted Tristan da Silva as well. So it was like maybe this final roster spot's going to come down to Joe Ingles or Markelle Fultz. It's not going to be Joe Ingles. People are upset about that. I do have my concerns with the fact that we're losing his 3-point shooting and we're losing his ball handling and playmaking in the second unit. I think there's going to be a lot more responsibility this year on Anthony Black and Cole Anthony in the second unit. But I am concerned that we're losing that. And I like Joe Ingles as a person, so it sucks to see him leave the team. But what are your thoughts before we talk about the final roster spot? Just what are your overall thoughts on Joe Ingles leaving for Minnesota?
Super surprising. I thought it was a done deal. I mean, the reports come out, they were right about Moe Wagner and figuring something out for him. But clearly, like, I don't know what happened, because we obviously know that Joe Ingles recently was at exit interviews where he was like, I want to be here in Orlando. I'll play for Osceola if I have to, if they don't have a spot for me on the NBA roster.
He said that in jest, but
yeah, of course. And he wasn't actually going to play on Osceola, but guess what? It's not that we didn't have a roster spot. We had one open. So it just makes me wonder what happened. Like, did he just start thinking? He's like, oh, I don't know. Like, during that time of renegotiating things and trying to get stuff on the table for him, was he just like talking with his buddies over there, Mike Conley and Rudy, and they're like, oh, just come play with us. Like, just a 1-year deal. Come play with us. Try to get a shot at a ring. And like, was there convincing, or like, did Joe just want to do it?
What I think it was is that Gary went out, tested the market, came back, and the Magic were like, we'll give you 2 years, $14 million. And for whatever reason, whatever his value was on the open market, he figured that it would be worth more to stay here in Orlando. And the Magic probably didn't expect them to be able to bring Gary back at that number in free agency. And once they did, it's like, okay, well, Gary's going to be our starting 3, essentially, right? Like Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, J.I., Moe Wagner is what I would expect that second unit to be. And then at that point, it's like, Joe, we're going to bring you back on a vet minimum and you're not going to play. So I think it had more to do with them being able to bring Gary back. And then it's like, how does Joe fit into all of this at that point?
Right. Yeah, that's probably right too. For sure. Because it was like, that obviously that makes sense. And that makes more sense than basically Joe just changing his mind in the renegotiation period. You would go on to think that, that was the case, that the Magic just things started panning out differently than what the Magic thought with Gary. So yeah, no, that makes total sense for sure. Sucks to see him go. Played a pivotal part in the regular season, but unplayable in the playoffs. So
I think people are like drawing too much from that one playoff series. Like, yeah, it proved to us that Joe Ingles probably can't play in a playoff series. You could argue that guys like Markelle Fultz aren't ideal in a playoff situation. But I think people are looking back at that playoff series and just like using a massive, like, broad brush to paint some of these guys. Like, Joe Ingles was an integral part of one of the best bench units in the league last year. Like, that bench unit offensively is not what it was without Joe Ingles, and people are just like brushing that aside. Yeah. That's not insignificant. Like, do I think Anthony Black and Cole Anthony together are going to be able to step up and take care of that in like the best case scenario? Sure. But I'm not 100% confident that they would be able to do that. Like, I do think that losing Joe is a loss.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at per cleaning the glass, the on-off numbers, Joe Ingles plus 6.7. And he was second on the team behind Jonathan Isaac, who was a plus 9.6. So, Joe
and played
Ingles,
way more minutes.
Right. Joe Ingles was absolutely a positive, largely. However,
and was the best shooter on this team last year.
Correct. But there's a reason the Magic didn't make it happen, right? That they were like, all right, like that's fine. Like we'll take Gary over you, basically. There's a reason for it. And Joe was great, but I do think that the team is just largely trying to build toward the playoffs and playoff success. And they think that obviously Anthony Black and those guys, Jet Howard, they can fill in the gaps. And maybe Tristan da Silva. I don't know what they're going to do with this rotation, man. I really don't.
And I think Gary just like so much more fits into the identity of the team, like his ability to play defense. Joe was
correct.
I hate to say it. Joe was a cone last year defensively, so I think there's that part to it. And last, I just feel bad because Joe spent so much time in Utah, has a very young family. Part of what was a part of the allure for them to come to Orlando was the fact that there's a special school here for his son who has special needs.
Yeah.
And they spent 1 year in Milwaukee, came to Orlando for 1 year. Now they're going back to Minnesota. Like, people forget that these guys are human beings. And I do feel bad, like, just in the sense that he's having to move his young family all over the place at this point in his career, and definitely wishing Joe the best of luck moving forward.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to get to, Luke, is the last roster spot. The Magic are pretty much, they are out of cap space. They use the remaining cap space to renegotiate Jonathan Isaac's contract. So at pretty much at this point, I believe anyone that they sign would have to be for like the veteran minimum. And when you start looking at options in free agency, I know some people think that the Magic should go out and get like another forward to sort of help bolster the depth there. I have my feelings about like the point guard situation. Like, is Jalen going to be the full-time point guard? What if Anthony Black or Cole Anthony goes down? You don't really have another backup option there. I would like to see the Magic go out and get another point guard. Where do you lie, and like who would you be targeting for this final roster spot?
Number one, with the
a lot of people just want us to bring back Markelle. Let's start there. Let's talk about Markelle as to like why or why shouldn't we? Because I do think there is a legitimate case for both. There is a legitimate case for bringing Markelle Fultz back because you could do so much worse in terms of like a backup or a third point guard than Markelle Fultz. If they're bringing him back at the minimum, which I do think he could probably go out and get more than the vet minimum. Maybe it's like a 1 year sort of, I'm going to get healthy again, bet on myself kind of deal, and then he goes elsewhere after next year. But if he comes back for the vet minimum and his role is to be the third point guard, he is not in the rotation by design, and you are giving the keys to Anthony Black, I am totally cool with that. Weird things happen in a team's hierarchy, right? When guys spend a lot of time in one place. And I don't want to say like there would be like chemistry issues, but I do think there's the possibility that all of a sudden it's weird if Markelle Fultz comes back, was such a big part of what the Magic did last year for better or worse. And now he's the guy on the vet minimum sitting at the end of the bench. For that reason, I feel like I would just want to move on and I don't want to bring Markelle back. But from a pure basketball standpoint, I feel like I could talk myself into it.
I couldn't, unless he's not playing.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I just don't know how realistic that is.
Break glass in case of emergency.
Given his history with this team and with this roster, it would just sort of, I feel like it could be awkward. Maybe it wouldn't be. If that's not the case, then I'm all for it, but I am apprehensive about that.
Listen, I didn't forget the shot charts.
I'm not saying put him in the rotation, but yes, in a break glass in case of emergency for a point guard, when you start going down this list, it drops off, and it drops off quickly. You've got Kyle Lowry, which I would literally cut off a part of my body rather than having Kyle Lowry on this team. if he comes to this team, I will smile and grit through my teeth and I will cheer for him because he would be a member of the Orlando Magic. But I'm telling you, I would hate it with every ounce of my body. Then Markelle Fultz, Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones is not coming here on the vet minimum. If you get Tyus Jones for the vet minimum, that we're at an A+ offseason. But that's not going to happen. Then you get to Kyra Lewis Jr., Patrick Beverley, which again, I would be right up there with the Kyle Lowry kind of stuff. Cam Payne, Dennis Smith Jr. Then it gets to Malachi Flynn, Jordan McLaughlin, Spencer McDinwiddie. You could talk me into, or McDinwiddie. What in the world? Spencer McDinwiddie. I'm craving for a McFlurry, I guess. Spencer Dinwiddie. I think because the previous name was Jordan McLaughlin, that messed me up. So Spencer Dinwiddie. But then we get to Orlando Magic legend Jeff Doughton, Patty Mills, Trent Forrest, 35-year-old Isaiah Thomas, Jordan Goodwin. Like, this list drops off very quickly. And if you're looking to bring in a point guard, if that's what they want to do, maybe they want to bring in another 3 or a 4 or a wing. But if you're looking for a point guard, which is what I think I would be doing, you do not have a lot of options.
But are you bringing that point guard in to do what? To just be the break glass guy?
And for a vet minimum, that would be the idea. Yeah, you have to give Anthony Black a shot this season. If we go another season not seeing significant Anthony Black and or Jet Howard minutes, it is that draft class would be a failure by this front office.
Correct.
You cannot go another year and just shelf both of those guys.
Anyone you bring in needs to be, for the sake of Anthony Black and his development and the Magic in general, anyone that you bring in absolutely needs to be a guy that doesn't play.
I would say for me right now, I would love either Cam Payne or Dennis Smith Jr. Those would be my choices.
Yeah. Are you playing? You're not playing them though.
No. Goodness gracious, no.
Yeah.
You have Goga in case Wendell goes down. You would have this third point guard in case of one of your other guards going down.
I will tell you this. If the Magic were to sign Markelle Fultz tomorrow, I'm
shutting off Twitter for the entire day. I'm tweeting out to welcome back Markelle, and I'm closing out the app for a full 24, possibly 48 hours.
I would spend until preseason, the dress rehearsal. I would spend until then, till I finally get an answer.
That wouldn't even be good enough for me. I would need to see the opening night rotation.
I will spend that amount of time wondering and honestly in agony of I don't have a clue.
Dreading opening night.
Can you imagine? Dude, oh my gosh. It wouldn't happen. And this is stupid. This is silly season still. And it's in that vein. The Magic starting lineup. You got Markelle Fultz.
Okay. All right. Knock it off.
Jalen Suggs.
Knock it off. No, I'm cutting you off. That's ridiculous. But no, if Markelle Fultz is like the second or third guy in off the bench, there would be real issues. And I think just for all of those reasons and the fact that he just offensively is not a fit at this point, for all of those reasons, I think I would lean. I'm like 66 and 33%. Like 66%. He's gone, 33% bring him back, just because like I can be talked into it. I would see how, I understand. I totally understand that perspective.
I'm just so
scared. For all of that that's why I want to move on and bring somebody else in.
It is not that I do not get me wrong here. I love Markelle Fultz, the person. But the reason that I can't let that play... I
even love Markelle Fultz, the player. I just don't love him on this team.
Oh, well, that's different. That's where you and I differ. But...
he's still fun to watch play basketball. Yeah, when he's doing his thing, he is still incredibly fun to watch basketball, but he just cannot shoot the ball. That's why I don't want him on my team.
When he's in the paint, he's awesome.
Okay, we're not. No. Just stop. Hold that thought there. I know what you were going to say. It doesn't need to be said. Just move it along.
Okay. As a person, if you tell me, Mark, if you promise me, if the Woj could say,
you better promise me, Jeff.
if the Woj comes out, and then he can just put in the replies somewhere what the expected role is on this team, that would be great. He won't do that, but that is the exact reason. I just don't want to go through these few months of having to question what he's going to do, what his role is going to be. I would love him there as a culture builder, a veteran presence. Everybody loves Markelle, but I cannot have him on the basketball floor. As a team that struggles and needs shooting, I cannot see him check in as, like you said, even fourth guy off the bench. I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, like DeLon Wright is going to Milwaukee for $3 million. Like I have to believe that some team out there that has some remaining cap space would give Markelle Fultz $3 or $4 million a year. Right? But does he just say, no, give me the vet minimum, which I think is like $2 or $3 million. Like, I think DeLon Wright might be on the vet minimum as a matter of fact, because I know Milwaukee does not have cap space. I could see him just say, hey, I'm going to do a 1 year, prove it, and then I'll go out and cash in, because the odds are if he does get another long-term deal, he's only probably going to get one more long-term deal. So trying to get that third and final contract and, pretty much set himself up. But
maybe Detroit
I would like to see
space. Overpay Markelle a little bit, Detroit, would you?
I saw someone in Detroit Pistons Twitter talking about going out and getting Gary Harris. And someone said, they said, we should go out and get Markelle. And they said, no, we're getting the better Magic point guard. And they were talking about Gary Harris. And it's like, well, Gary Harris came on back, buddy. So
yeah, and Gary Harris ain't running your
But
offense.
again, for all the reasons that we just laid out, I think it's just best to move on from Markelle Fultz at this point.
Too much there.
And yeah, if and when that happens, it's going to be a sad day, but just sort of is what it is. Luke, I think we covered basically everything. At this point, we're literally just seeing what happens with that final roster spot for the Orlando Magic. I would expect, hopefully, within the next week or so, we're going to have our answer on that. Probably sooner than that, if I had to guess. But do you have anything else before we go ahead and wrap this up?
No, let's wrap up here.
All right, everybody have a fun and safe 4th of July. Just spend time with your loved ones. That is going to do it for this one. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!